Welcome back, everyone. Mix 1041. We're on mixtv.tv. And my friend George Mullinix is here. It must be football season. CityScope Magazine. George, how in the world are you?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me on your show.
Buddy, anytime. We're always great. Just glad to see you. And let me tell you, CityScope Magazine, your high school football collector's edition, is absolutely... I was going to say hit a home run, but you scored a touchdown, George.
There
Congratulations.
you go. Plus the extra points.
Plus the extra point. This is beautiful, George.
Well, thanks. We've got a great staff, great team, and they do it every year. We're really proud of them and proud of the publication.
Well, George, let's talk about the publication. I know this is your 12th year, but let's tell me about this year's publication.
Well, as we do every year, we feature 41 teams that cross 9 different counties. They compete in 13 different regions, and for every team, we interview the coach, and the coach tells us a little bit about their team. At least they'll give us a little bit of information. Yeah. And then we have their schedule. We have stats from last year. We have the rosters, all of the athletes along with their positions and numbers, pictures of the athletes. We do that for 41 teams. And then we have features or articles with the magazine as well that relate to football locally. And so between the features and the 41 teams, and then we also show the top players that are being recruited here in our area, that creates a 285-page high school football collector's edition.
It's absolutely incredible. We're talking, of course, about CityScope Magazine, their high school football collector's edition. I want to break it down a little bit here. And first of all, something I know you're very proud of, you and your team, this helps raise money for the schools themselves, doesn't it?
It does, and we've tried to do this every year. When one way is we provide the publication to booster clubs at no cost. We encourage them to sell the magazine to the parents or the fans, and keep every dollar that they sell for their programs. And then the other thing that we do is we have a special promotion called the Golden Football.
Yes.
And these are cardboard golden footballs.
Now you told me this is just a sample.
That's right. That's right. And we place the golden footballs randomly in magazines, and those magazines are distributed randomly to the booster clubs. And if someone finds the golden football and they call us with the code on the back, we donate $500 to their program. So
wow.
This year we have 6 golden footballs, and in total we should donate an additional $3,000 to our local schools. So football is fun. It's about coaches and players and schools and fanfare. And for us to be able to provide some level of support to the schools for what is such a special time in our communities, we're all about that.
We're joined by George Mullinix, CityScope Magazine, their high school football collector's edition. I want to break some of the sections down too here, George, and I've been all the way through it, and it's just, like I said, it's beautiful, but it's also informative. For love of the game, tell me about this feature.
Well, if you look at the coaches that are in place today throughout our area, there are several coaches that have coached as a head coach for as many as 19 years all the way up to 40 years. And these coaches have achieved some remarkable accomplishments. They've really dedicated their lives to leading high school football teams, but just as important to all of them is the development of the character and integrity of their players that they take on with them throughout their lives. So, for example, in there we have Gary Rankin, who's at Boyd Buchanan, 40 years as a head coach, 17 state championships. Frank Barton down at Christian Heritage High School, 30 years as a head coach, more than 200 wins. Damon Floyd here in Cleveland, or Bradley County, Bradley Central, 19 years, started his career there at Bradley Central. Mm-hmm. I think he just eclipsed 100 wins recently. Mm-hmm. And there's others. So it's a real testament to the caliber of the high school football coaches here in our area and the accomplishments that they've had and their commitments to the kids themselves.
We're joined by George Mullinix at CityScope Magazine, their high school football collector's edition. And the next section really speaks to the entire atmosphere, the entire the entire package when you go to a high school football game. It's a concession stand, George.
Yeah, well,
so important.
There they go, the unheralded concession stand volunteers. They're there early. They leave late. They make all the delicious food that all of us enjoy. They have their favorite foods. They have special nicknames for some of the people in their, on their team. They have plenty of funny stories. If you can imagine running a concession stand at some of these high school football games, I'm sure you'd have plenty of them. But for example, at Red Bank, they have their special Tommy dogs.
Yep.
And the Tommy dogs are covered in garlic powder, smothered in Worcester sauce, and then they're cooked in hamburger fat. And they're a delicacy at the Red Bank games. One of my favorite stories, too, is at Signal Mountain. There's been one individual who's always been taking care of the popcorn.
Yep.
And so he has a nickname since he's been in charge of the popcorn. He's affectionately called the Colonel.
The Colonel.
Kind of corny. No pun intended.
Come on.
Cut it out.
Those concession stand stars, unbelievable. Then, what a special section, like father, like son.
Yeah. So many of the coaches today, they've always had their sons, with them at the games when they've been younger, and they've coached them at home. But there's several coaches today who are coaching with their sons on their teams, and needless to say, that's a special bond. And so that story talks a lot about that relationship, and the relationship not only as a dad but as a coach, and how do you separate the two, and what it means to the athlete to have their dad coaching them, and how important it is to them to play well for their dad, with their dad. So it's a really uplifting article.
George Mullinix joins us, CityScope Magazine, their high school football collector's edition. And then, my goodness, you can almost, when you think of high school football, you can hear the marching bands in our ears all these years. Boy, they are such a huge part of it, aren't they?
They really are. And if you look at the bands that are, in place at a lot of the high schools throughout the area, they're exceptional. They compete nationally. They compete regionally. The band directors, in many cases, have been there for decades. When you talk to the directors and and those that are involved with the bands, it's very much like sports. Each person has a role. Each person needs to execute at a specific time to a cadence, and collectively the band produces terrific entertainment. But it's very much like sports. The level of dedication that each member of these bands has is off the chart. They practice long hours. They have to have a tremendous commitment to the band itself. So it was enjoyable, and then you start to look at some of the names. You have Cleveland's, Blue Raider marching band, and you've got Walker Valley High School's marching band, and Hickson's Wildcat marching bands. They all have just terrific names, and they're just terrific entertainers.
Certainly are. And then something I always look for in your CityScope football collector's edition, I always go to the players to watch, because that is, you've got 20 players to watch. It's always interesting to see who you guys single out.
Well, and that's the other thing about our football here in the area is we typically every year have at least 20 more plus high school football players that are exceptional, and they're recruited by D1 schools across the country. And many of the football players that have come out of our area have not only gone on to play in D1, but they've gone on to play in the pros. And, we just have terrific athletes in this area. For example, Shekiah Mills-Knight over at Baylor, he's been recruited by 30, 40-plus teams. I think he recently committed to Ole Miss. Jokin Dodson at Baylor, a wide receiver, recently committed to Tennessee, same thing. There's just a tremendous number of terrific athletes in our area that are recognized by D1 schools early on in their career, and then, they're recruited heavily as they start to get closer to their senior year.
George Mullinix, it is CityScope, the Football Collector's Edition. Okay, how do we get it, George? How do we get these magazines?
So we would encourage everyone to purchase the magazine from their booster clubs, and I think just think of it as a donation to the school or the program. Otherwise, you can purchase it at Barnes & Noble, and the majority of the gift shops throughout our area, local gift shops, are selling the magazine as well.
But Yeah, and I agree with you. I think in the first position, get a hold of these schools and their booster clubs would be a great thing. George, you and your team are just fantastic. Top of the line, top shelf. The quality that you guys put out is unmatched, and congratulations.
Well, thanks. And I can't thank you enough for having me on your show.
In it, you're always welcome. Again, it's CityScope Magazine, their football collector's edition. And look for the golden footballs. We still got some out there, don't we, George?
That's right.
Look at that right there. All right, my buddy George Mullinix at CityScope. They do such excellent work. And we'll come right back with more in a moment.